United States Navy. I held a top secret crypto level 14 extra sensitive material handling security clearance. I worked in the code room at the Naval Communication Station in San Francisco. In 1969, I received a priority message from a ship near Alaska that was classified as secret. The ship reported merging out of the ocean near port bow, a brightly glowing reddish-orange elliptical object approximately 70 feet in diameter, merged out of the water, shot into space, traveling at about 7,000 miles per hour. This was tracked on ship's radar and substantiated. Years later, I worked at the Naval Electronic Engineering Center in San Diego for 13 years. The co-worker who I worked with worked at the NORAD facility. When he first started working at the facility, he noticed objects going on the screens to track everything out in space and in the air, objects going off the scale, doing right-angle turns. When he inquired, his older supervisor advised him that, quote, it was just a visit from one of our little friends. He thought this was a little unusual. These statements are true and willing to testify under oath before Congress. Thank you.
We also now are talking to Dan Willis.
Well, after 10 years of meeting with scientists and inventors and essentially, not getting a solution out to the world, interestingly enough, a media company in 2014 wanted me to write an article on media control. I had no idea about Operation Mockingbird or anything like that, and I really wanted to find out why the message got sanitized to the public. So I gladly accept, and I started to research back, and I found that the best way to try to understand this subject matter, because it took me a while to even wrap my head around what the other witnesses were saying. My testimony was like baby stuff compared to nukes being shut down, 57 different species, bases on the moon. I mean, all this incredible explosive testimony. So I had to find out what happened. Why did the public get cut out of this? So the best way to understand it is to go back through time. Go back to the year 1900 and start looking at, I was already familiar as a foundational basis. I was aware of the hundreds of testimonies. I became very familiar with the witnesses and a lot of the testimonies. I started to research many authenticated, classified documents that all corroborate together with what the testimonies are saying. So we know if we have 500 witnesses, going before a congressional hearing, all willing to testify under oath as penalty of perjury before a congressional hearing, even if you had 5 instead of 500, you'd have pretty much a closed-shut case.
Yeah.
But they effectively sanitized it in such a way that that people didn't have any idea what actually happened back in 2001. So in looking back, looking at documents, looking at events, all of a sudden I realized that, my God, the Operation Mockingbird and that document that Daniel Sheehan shared with me, the CIA NSA operatives, I got a firsthand, beside when we were on CNN and all the major networks, CBS sent a special assignment team down to interview me. And I told him after I saw what CNN did with it that, look, I'm not willing to do this testimony, this interview, unless I could say, it's a very short 10-second statement, that we have these scientists within these black projects that can prove we have a solution, pollution-free, that can get us off of nuclear, oil, and coal, that help to save the energy and environmental crisis. They promised up and down, yes, you can definitely say that. So they sent their whole crew down, interviewed me for about 45 minutes. Basically, The only thing I got to say was, we've reached a critical point where the truth needs to be revealed to the people. But what they did was a cookie cutter, exactly what CNN did, saying, oh, we are not alone. Some people think they have proof there is. They want to have a congressional hearing on the reality of UFOs. But which effectively, to the person after a hard day's work, sitting back on the evening couch and listening to the evening news, thinks, well, that's nice, but, there's more important things to do. So I confronted the producer, and she was kind of upset. She's never had anything like this happen before. And she said, I know, I'm sorry, I know I promised, but the higher executives made me cut that part out. And that document that Daniel Sheehan shared with me kind of makes it clear who the higher executives are in the mainstream media.
Yeah.
After congressional hearing was denied, we traveled across all the major cities in the United States. We figured, well, a grassroots movement, where we go into major cities. I toured with the Western United States with Dr. Greer in Boulder and San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Ashland, Portland, all these different major cities. We rented huge halls. The executive briefing video, which was 4 hours long with a 500-page briefing document, which we met with on Capitol Hill with about 24 senators and congresspeople we gave to, which basically, the hot potato, not on my watch type of thing. And they're basically out of the loop, not knowing what's going on with all this. They use this giggle factor every single time. In San Diego, they had dancing alien dolls with smoke. In San Francisco, they were told to make fun of it. We heard behind the scenes. And so when they came out, it says, oh, the Disclosure Project's looking to aliens to solve the world's energy problems. And then in Portland, I was able to get a video clip, maybe we can share it on the video here, of one time where they're saying, oh, we have, scientists and witnesses that have, 0-point energy devices and all this stuff. And then afterwards, the news people, they look at each other and give a big laugh, and they say, UFOs, energies, come on, let's get on with the big story. This week, bozos meet the bonkos in the playoffs, and they just take it on from there.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of, the giggle factor has kind of been bred into people over the years, ever since the whole thing to shut down any interest in the UFO matter. Some do it out of ignorance, and it's an uncomfortable nervousness because it's so far out of our normal indoctrinated reality that we have been grown into. I was born about 30 days before, after James Forrestal was thrown out the hospital window this guy is back in 1949, so I've seen many generations of this indoctrination and control through the mainstream media that happened, back in 1950 with Alan Dulles and Operation Mockingbird. So anyway, long story short, I started to find out that's what happened. Basically, the reason why the National Press Club event occurred, this sounds like a science fiction story, I know, but it's based on fact, and there's many, many witnesses that can substantiate it. And that is that Nazi Germany did develop anti-gravity. They had it operational by 1934. The United States government did not have it available till October of 1954. That's 2 decades. That's 20-year advance. What happened was the industrial might of the United States Nazis could not compete with that, but they had super advanced technologies. They intimidated Truman and Eisenhower. That was the flyover in 1952. They set up operations to former Nazi SS officer Prince Bernhard set up the Bilderberg meetings in 54. Eisenhower had the 54 meeting at Murdoch, Edwards Air Force Base, with a benevolent group of Nordic extraterrestrials. Their offer was turned down. one of our Disclosure Project witnesses was on Eisenhower's staff, Brigadier General Stephen Lovkin, who was aware that Eisenhower had lost control to the corporations and that it would not be in the best of hands, he said. And so what happened was, by February 11th, 1955, Nazi Germany had basically escaped, moved all their operations down in Antarctica into underground operations. They also started their underground operations bringing over the mastermind of Nazi Germany's underground facilities over there in Germany, Xavier Dorsch, in 1946 through paperclip, and they started in New Mexico building out these huge underground facilities, which today we have huge, massive facilities all over the place connected by maglev trains. Many witnesses have seen, experienced that. I'm going to be interviewing Emery Smith, which is one of the 21st century whistleblowers who has been to some of these places. But what happened was Eisenhower realized that with this deal is going to start providing Nazi Germany with resources, with the manpower that and also human rights abusing, using slave labor. You couldn't tell the public this. And so what happened was when, the original MJ-12 group was set up by Truman. That was back in 1947 with the same time they started the U.S. Air Force. By 1955, an executive order started a new Majestic 12 group, which was headed by none other than Allen Dulles, who was infamous for the Nazi infiltration. They also had Vice President Nelson Rockefeller had restructured the government so that our legal constitutional government no longer had jurisdiction and that over the CIA and MJ-12 operations. And so the operations that were originally operating out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio got shifted and moved over to Area 51 and S4, which is where they continued on their reverse engineering. Eisenhower attempted to gain access to this after this whole restructuring happened. He was denied access. He said, "Sir, you do not have jurisdiction." And he said, "Hell, I don't. If I don't get in there, I'm going to take the First Army out of Colorado and invade Area 51." And so they were allowed two agents to go over there to see what was going on. There was extraterrestrial presence there. There was reverse engineering. He was a very concerned president when he left office, and everybody's aware of his farewell address. What happened was Kennedy was brought into all this. Now, Kennedy was not, green on this whole thing. He had a background in Office of Naval Intelligence. He was aware back in 1942 when the Battle of LA was happening, where it turns out that two of these ET drone craft were shot down, and one was taken by it was the Army Air Force at the time, before 1947, taken to Wright-Patterson, and the Navy grabbed the other one, took it over to China Lake to reverse engineer. So in 1942, when we were just starting to reverse engineer, the Nazis already set up a moon base.
Yeah.
So that's how far we've gone. So what happened after Eisenhower? Yes, I'm sorry. It's a long rant. I didn't mean to go on so long.
Yeah,
but there's more to it after Eisenhower.
Well, I wanted to I think a lot of people, and I totally respect your story, I think a lot of people have heard this history. What I'm curious about is there are people that are saying that the Nazis never got defeated, really, because of what's happening with secret space programs. Supposedly they're connected with other entities, that they're still out there. Have you heard anything to this effect? I've heard stories that there's a kind of a wing of one of these other secret space programs that is actually Nazi controlled, that they're still out there. Have you heard anything to that effect?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're operating right now. Well, Heinrich Himmler wanted to preserve the Aryan race for the future. He believed in the yugas and there could be a cataclysm in the future and wanted to have this. So they, working with Martin Bormann, they brought in about 500,000 women from Ukraine and Germany from a certain Aryan bloodline, and about 1 out of every 50 women. So they ended up with about 50,000 women that between ages of 16 and 24, and they were all outfitted with these little blue outfits with the SS symbol on it. And they were part of the Antarctic settlement women. And they were all shipped down there to, they had about 2,500, I'm not sure if I got the numbers right, SS Waffen troops. So you got 4 girls to every guy. And so they're doing what Nazi boys and girls do down in Antarctica for all these generations.
They called this New Schwabenland, I believe. This was the whole name of the whole
New Schwabenland, yes.
new country they decided to, yeah.
Yeah, Neue Schwabenland.
Yeah,
Yeah.
means New Berlin.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that down in Argentina, down in Bariloche, Argentina, where it's like Nazi headquarters, way down there. Many presidents have gone down there. 1960, Eisenhower went down there. You have Clinton went down there, Obama went down there, and what's interesting was just, I think it was just the beginning of this year, Secretary of State, who's no longer Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, was sent down to Bariloche. Jeff Bezos of Amazon was also down there. He's working something with the Chinese in a space program. Anyway, what the intelligence report that came out from Benjamin Fulford was that they've been down there these generations that have, and they no longer relate to what their forefathers did, you know, with the eugenics programs and all the things like that. And they wanted to join the light side of the force, is where they said, and you know, and release these technologies that are, you know,
Really?
You know, so you can go from Los Angeles to New York in just a couple of minutes, supersonic travel, energy devices, you know. Anyway, that was a report that came out. And it's interesting, you know, I didn't think there was any hope, because after we, you know, toured across the United States, we met with, you know, thousands of people, had them write letters to their congressmen, representatives, the president. You know, they're all out of the loop, of course.
Yeah.
But I found that people couldn't have the time to write these letters, so I set up with a programmer all night long, and we put together an online fax. And so we had about 30,000 faxes go to the president, and I also found a database for the embassies around the world, so it went out to the embassies. And so this was before 9/11, of course. And what happened was, I was kind of a site administrator for the disclosureproject.org, and I put the online fax there. And I asked people to send the responses from their representatives, show them how they're responding to this issue. And what basically, after I got about 53 letters that I put it up on the webmatrix.net, everybody can read them. basically they're saying that, Project Blue Book and official denials from NASA, and we'll keep your views in mind if there's ever extraterrestrial hearings in Congress, and basically showing that they were all indoctrinated how to respond to this. So, of course they're out of the loop. The heads of intelligence is out of the loop. The senators and Congress people who have a short term sometimes, are definitely out of the loop. So, how can you change the situation? If the mainstream media is completely controlled by the 5 corporations that are tied into the CIA, which go into the billions of dollars of think tanks and has roots back to Tavistock Institute, that it's a fine science. It's finely polished. So when you watch the evening news, they're engineering your consent and engineering your perception on how to perceive things. And the average person, it's hard to wrap their mind around it. When I went to Washington in 2001, I had a hard time wrapping my mind around, what all of this implicates. And so, it wasn't until...
It seems to me like the government has totally lost control. In fact, the media has lost control too, because they're being totally controlled. What do we do when the government is supposed to be in charge of the military? Could the military remedy some of this? What is the solution?
Exactly, my thoughts exactly. If you write to your congressman, that doesn't do any good. You write to CNN and New York Times and CBS, NBC, ABC. That's why I used to be an ABC newsman. You're going to basically get ignored, or they'll spin it in such a way, as I had many experiences. So if the media is controlled, which is the voice for the people to know what's going on, in the military, as Tom knows, and ex-Navy also, first thing you do is when you attack the military of the enemy, first thing you do, what do? You take out the communication tower. Yeah. Or in Vietnam,
and then you take out the leadership
which I served in combat action. In Vietnam, the first guy to get taken out, they looked for that
radio
antenna.
Guy. That's it. Radio guy.
The radio guy gets taken out.
Yep.
So if you cut into the communications and use psychological warfare, as the fourth CIA director, General Smith said, that it has implications for psychological warfare, and this whole subject in a released document. You can control the perception of the public, and so
maybe
so how do you do this?
Well, I think
how do you change this?
I think Dr. Greer is onto this whole thing with the CE5 stuff. So if we can't get it from our own government, then using the personal communication, the quantum transmitter in the human brain, we reach out to the ETs, and we get them to communicate this message. Because if our governments, if the planetary infrastructure has been co-opted, then once people realize that they can make contact, I think that's where Greer was on track, is that this ability for people to start learning what that means and start initiating their own contact,
Well, I found out something very exciting I want to share with both of you and the listeners that gave me great hope, and I still have great hope to this day. And that is, I've been talking to and interviewing some of the 21st century whistleblowers that have been involved in, William Tompkins. You have Emery Smith, who I'm going to interview later this month. You have these people who have, like William Tompkins has the documentation to back up. Also, a fellow who I had the pleasure of meeting that was involved in the Marine Corps Intelligence Unit And what all this indicates is that Eisenhower was no dummy. He knew that he could lose complete control to a republic through this whole agreement that was set up. What he did was he set up a secret Marine intelligence unit that would activate in the future if they ever got to a place of such corruption going on. And there was an indicator of that happened in November of last year, that a Marine Corps expeditionary unit, a number of Marine Corps helicopters were flying for 30 minutes, a full 30 minutes, over CIA headquarters, basically to tell them to back off, to stop the Obama policy, supplying the guns to the Syrian freedom fighters, which was going all into the hands of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, which was used to kill our guys. And so what's happening is the corruption, the Bilderberg meetings happened every year since 1954, basically bringing in the most influential people in finance and media and everything in order to support the agenda. And they also pick who the world leaders are going to be for the different countries and give them, the support so they, whatever means possible they can do. I believe that the military intelligence behind the scenes knew full well of what's going on. There was an indication of this happening with Admiral Mike Rogers, the head of the NSA, who, when Trump was being spied on by the whole Democratic National Committee with Hillary and everything, what happened was he broke chain of command. As Tom knows, in the military, that's a big no-no. He broke the chain of command, and he went to Trump Tower and warned them. And so it looks like the NSA is being taken over from the inside, from the white hats. We'll call the black hats the people that are still working with a limited disclosure, that are wanting to not reveal everything that's going on because there's going to be crimes against humanity, war tribunals, if this whole thing comes out. And so what happened was anyway, what's interesting is we have these Q posts. Now, I don't really follow them really closely, but it's kind of interesting that it seems like it's a method in order to try to awake the public by these posts that keep asking certain questions that get the people to try to think about putting things together, about trying to educate. What I had to do in order to write that article was look back in a chronology and understand how we got to where we are today, which I had no idea of what was going on, is trying to educate the public. Because right now we're under siege. The alternative media, they're changing the algorithms. YouTube was basically owned by Google, which was originally set up by the CIA, which was also Facebook, was originally set up by the CIA as a method to gather intelligence and also control the perception. It's all about perception management. As Edward Snowden leaked, they have like the GCHQ documents where they have sock puppets, trolls, shills, because as Brzezinski back in 2012, he said, head of the Trilateral Commission along with David Rockefeller, there's a fear that there's a global awakening happening, that people are starting to wake up to this whole situation. Yeah. And so they're desperate right now in order to manage and control the perception. They have huge teams out there that are hiring in order to take out, we just know like Alex Jones has got taken out. I'm not a big fan of Alex Jones, but he does get out some information.
I think they shot
it's his
themselves
flavor
in the foot.
and style.
I think they shot themselves in the foot. Because if you think about it, what that's going to say is, well, wait a minute now. I'm not a fan of Alex Jones either, but I'm a kind of a person that says, let the fools rage. Let them speak. You don't have to agree with them, but let them speak. And it's this paternalism that is trying to save us from ourselves kind of mentality, like we don't want you to hurt yourself. Don't go looking at that or listening to this or that. We're going to guide the conversation. That paternalism, I think people are going to react the other way. I think there's going to be other platforms. It's just my opinion. I think other platforms are going to come up because of it. They're going to get some competition. That's my hope anyway. You know?
Yeah, and it spurs interest when they people see that, well, he got shut down. Why? And
Yeah, we
they
can't
start
even see
looking
the
at it.
evidence. What did he get shut down for? That's, to me, that's not fair. I should be able to go and see a document on Google site or on Facebook site that says why we shut him down. Here are the articles. You can read them yourself, and this is why we shut him down. But they're not letting us do that. They've taken even the evidence away from us. And it's this monolithic lack of accountability, I think, is really going to backfire. That's my hope anyway. It's going to backfire.
Yeah, Facebook do the same thing. I've been in Facebook jail several
you
times.
have no appeals.
And I have no clue why I ended up there.
Yeah.
Well, they got everybody, everybody uses Google, a lot of people have all migrated on to Facebook, and, people are going to WWII, and they're going to BitChute, I think, for video, trying to set up on alternative platforms, because they know that these platforms are getting sanitized left and right like crazy. The algorithms, if you type in, let's say, your safety of vaccines, or the who killed Kennedy, or what really happened in 9/11, or something like that. What happens is the search engine algorithms will bring up, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post. It will bring up all the officials, and the conspiracies, they'll be number 285 on the list if they even show up at all.
You can't even find them. I've done some searches right after. I don't know, something had come out, and I did some searches. The first day you could find it. The second day they were gone. The results were gone.
Yeah.
Within 24 hours they were gone. So it's happening. And I've seen weird stuff on Facebook where you post an article, and literally I was in conversation with somebody, and I posted an article from Reuters and one from Newsweek and one from the Miami Herald. Now these are all big media outlets. Poof. Literally, while we watched, they disappeared. So I'm not even making that up. I'm like, let me do it again. Poof, gone. So there is an AI that is at work inside these platforms, and I think people are going to get tired of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They have an AI program to do that. Absolutely. Besides, they were originally started with the Southern Oregon Poverty Center, going out with humans, seeking out which ones, according to the criteria, which ones to take offline. I've done the same on YouTube. A lot of videos I watch later. I go back and delete. It's like
that. I think more of a bigger message needs to go out. And I guess I'm curious from you is, what do you feel? Do you have a sense about what ET is thinking about what's going on in ET land? What do you think their move is going to be? What do you think they're thinking in reaction to all of this? Do you have a sense of that?
I can only speculate on that, of course, as all of us. But it would seem that the races that would like to see us evolve would want us to start becoming aware of the reality that all of us have been hoodwinked into, and that how our planet's been technologically hijacked. They're starting to panic. They're pulling out all the stops right now, because they know that there's a power of consciousness. There's, as Brzezinski said, the fear of this global awakening. Well, there's this thing that my personal belief is that truth has this ability to resonate within each one of us. And so no matter how many lies or goes out there, or how they try to, muddy the waters, the truth has some way of resonating and reaching into people. And there is this, morphogenic field, this collective mind, of which, science is showing more that each one of us is like a fractal of a larger mind that we're all connected to, and that nobody is really separate, you know, and that as you and I are talking about this subject matter, we're affecting millions, billions of minds, and you know, to some degree, because this awareness propagates, you know, and it's been proven in the past where, you know, before the internet, that people would have inventions or ideas, and it doesn't matter what it is, in science or art or whatever, and somebody on the other side of the planet, the exact same thing at the same time, and you know, they've seen this with animals, and we see it in nature, you know, with the birds and the bees and the fish, you know, they all have like a collective mind, and you know, we're not really that different. We have a collective mind as well. Yeah, they're afraid of this collective awakening. You know, what's interesting was November of last year, remember when the USS, what is it? The Nimitz, yeah, the Nimitz, one of the fighter jets was capturing the UFO, which is called the Tic Tac, you know, and it was on every single, on BBC, CNN, New York Times. I mean, they saturated for about 3 days. They made sure that every single one of, you know, and there's a list of all the media publications they control. Everyone on that list was propagating, making sure that that got into the mind of everyone. It's like a setting the stage for the next disclosure. You know, just like the movie Pearl Harbor came out, you know, the set into the psyche, you know, just before the 9/11 event happened, you know, now that patriotic fear, you know, oh, we're getting attacked like Pearl Harbor, you know.
Oh, right.
There's a whole infiltration into Hollywood, which happened back in 1951 in Project Dove. They rewrote the history of what happened with the Nazis in 1946 by the Rockefeller Foundation, which did what's called a limited hangout there, which they didn't reveal the critical pieces of information that they escaped, and they had anti-gravity and the occult and everything that's connected with that. And, you know, the Invention Secrecy Act, 1951, and, you know, can't forget Operation Mockingbird, 1950. Anyway, they had 400 journalists. Today they have what's called non-official covers, where, you know, these journalists are being paid by the CIA and given information to look like it's coming from independent sources, but they're actually, you know, putting it. So, you know, this is happening today. You know, they have witnesses coming out and revealing this, you know, some brave, very brave people. So
I think that they are getting scared, and my wondering then, how long will they wait? How scared do they have to be before they call the alien card?
Yeah, it's
a good question. We don't know.
Yeah, it's a.
Well, are you saying, Augie, that you think there might be an ET intervention because they can't wait anymore for us to get it together, or do you feel something else?
No, the false or the fake alien invasion.
Oh, right.
Because they already have the capability of doing it. They have the holograms. They can have thousands and thousands of UFOs in the sky, and maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 6 of them in between, shooting at something on the ground to create fear. All this is already engineered, and they can set it out tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon if they like to.
Exactly, they can just
turn it on. How long will they wait? How scared do they have to be before they call in that card? We don't know. But I'll tell you, when the first invasion comes, when the first flock of UFOs in the sky, they're not our friends. But maybe the second one is, because when the first one is there, our friends, they will see, okay, now the people now will understand that they are not alone, so now we can come in and we can do something good.
Well, it's interesting, the concept.
A follow-up ET intervention. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. That's how I see it happen.
Well, it's interesting, the concept of the, in Star Trek they talk about the prime directive, where you don't interfere with the civilization. Well, it's interesting that Gene Roddenberry got a lot of his ideas and everything from Leslie Stevens Jr., who his father was Admiral Leslie Stevens. They both were in naval intelligence. And his father was a contemporary with Admiral Rickleboda, who was in charge of the program that William Tompkins was disseminating this information out from 29 Navy spies embedded into the Nazi Germany secret space program back in the early 40s. That even the spies couldn't believe the information that they were going, that this reptilian race and this technology, and they were attempting to decipher it. We were trying to play catch up. Anyway, so he was well aware of the secret space program. So they were part of a dissemination program by the Office of Naval Intelligence, Star Trek, Outer Limits, Battlestar Galactica.
I think the word is
these things were
acclamation.
seeding.
Acclamation. That was the word that they use, is to acclimate the public, get them used to these ideas, and then to seed the whole thing. So in a way it kind of works against them, because now this is very common. People that watched 20 years of Star Trek, for them to see an ET is, okay, what's the big deal? That was the goal though, right?
Yeah, but you have different fractions going on. You've got the CIA, cabal, Air Force that's wanting a limited disclosure to kind of perpetuate this situation and hide the human rights abuse, to give and carry this on for another 50 or 100 years or whatever. Where you have the Navy element, where Tompkins in 2001. By the way, we got support from the White Hats to do the 2001 event. That's how that occurred, while it was all getting whacked. Tompkins consulted with Admiral Hugh Webster before releasing his book, which was titled Nordic Extraterrestrial, I forget the title right off the top of my head. But anyway, he said, Bill, tell it all. Don't leave anything out. It's most important to the future of our country. And so here you have a Navy admiral, and then you have Navy Admiral Tom Wilson saying, get before the public, this group's illegal, get this information out. And now you notice that Trump is surrounded by a lot of Navy and Marines, generals, admirals. And it's interesting that Dr. Jerome Corsi said that before Trump was elected, that the military actually approached him and said that essentially the corruption has gotten so bad that they needed to bring in him as the president in order to drain the swamp, as they say. But people have no idea how deep, dark and dirty that swamp is, with the pedophile connections and the satanic connections and the whole situation. Which when they leaked the Podesta emails, the mainstream media never touched what the content of those emails were, which made it clear the Clintons were manipulating all the media in many emails and so forth, and and then they shifted the whole thing to blame Russia after it appears they murdered Seth Rich, who provided it, to WikiLeaks. But so it looks like the only way I can think of really taking down this dark cabal is through our military intelligence operating behind the scenes, especially if they've gained control of the NSA. Because there's some nefarious things going on with the NSA. I look back at 2015 when I did a show with the Honorable Paul T. Hellyer, who says, there is a grave warning to the United States he gave in 2015 that we have an enemy within. And what they were using is, in Operation Jade Helm, they were using artificial intelligence in order to control military troops and everything. And, they have all these FEMA camps already manned and set ready to go. And
there's staff too.
Yeah, and with profiling, as William Binney, the head codebreaker for the NSA, revealed that they're not doing anything for stopping terrorists. They're making dossier profiles on every single individual. So you could fit into, this one's awake, this one's not. We can use them as a slave.
Right. They're recording the internet every day is being recorded. The entire thing is being recorded. It's just amazing the amount of data that they're recording, and it's all going up to these warehouses, these warehouse computer systems up in Utah. I guess is where they're storing everything. There's one of the places. God knows how many places they have like that.
Yottabytes. Yottabytes of storage. It means that every single communication on this planet for years they can store.
I wish I could get access to those backups because I got some stuff I could get recovered.
I found it interesting that during the Obama administration that 270 command positions in the military. Now, if you have this capability to be able to profile everybody, you would know who could be compliant and who would not go along with the program. And, there's been military that have been approached by, say, do you have a problem with, killing American citizens? There's been several witnesses that have brought that out. Interestingly, very, very low on the Navy, in fact, zero on the Navy, and it was a survey done. Most of it with the Air Force and Army, but, I'm sure it doesn't represent everybody in those services because I know there's a lot of good people in our intelligence community and our military that are what you would call the white hats that care about individual freedom, about the Constitution, about a republic. And so thank God for the White House working behind the scenes, because this is how, if they have control of the NSA, they have to use that. The cabal has to use those facilities as well. And with the quantum computers, they can decrypt anything within minutes or seconds. So there's no place to hide. And what's interesting, what brings this about as being real, is that back on December 21st, 2017, Trump did an executive order freezing the assets, in other words, so you don't have any teeth anymore, of anybody doing human rights abuse or corruption. And you read anybody in the cabal, anybody is doing one of those two things.
Right.
And so that exact same day that executive order, General Mathis, the Secretary of Defense, flew down with 1,000 Marines down to Guantanamo Bay with $500 million to expand the facilities down there. And as you're probably both well aware, there's close to 45,000 sealed indictments that are ready to be revealed. And so they through the NSA and through the intelligence gathering abilities, they know who the dark cabal, the black hats are, basically. And so the problem is, and both of you are contributing greatly to the positive future of humanity by doing these alternative shows, is the awakening of the public, because as you know, they demonized our president constantly on all the mainstream, every way they can, and it has worked for pitting us against each other. Blacks against whites, Mexicans against whites. You have gays against straights, or you have the South, the Confederates against the Union.
Yeah, there's a lot of divisive stuff going on. Absolutely.
Yeah, and they're waking up the sleeping giant.
The psychological warfare that is being engineered in the media, what news story do they choose to show? How do they choose to show the story? What kind of emotions and things does it instill in people?
That's why I think we need to help people to see the center and say, okay, I can't let this guy or that person, I can't let them dominate or trigger us. We're being triggered daily. Triggered. with these emotional responses. You know, I think we're all being massively, and I think that's the thing, is to recognize it. That we have to show people that we're being.
Once you recognize it, then it doesn't have the same
It
influence
diffuses
over you.
it, right?
Yeah.
Well, we have to work with love. You know, we have to work with acceptance and realize that these people are innocent. They've been duped. They've been psychologically engineered. And I know there's kind of a disturbing thing that I see some of the left doing, is like they don't even want to hear about anything. They don't want to hear about any information.
Right.
Yeah, they don't tell me any facts. I don't want to hear about it. But
I'm seeing the same thing on
when
the right
everybody,
too, I'm seeing the same thing on the right. The hard right is being the same.
Oh,
That's what I'm saying. It's the people are decided what they're going to believe. It doesn't matter what you tell me. This is what I'm going to believe. I've already got my mind made up. And people are not saying, wait a minute, now just wait a dang minute here. I need to really maybe think. And I think that's something that needs to happen, is we need to just stop and take a breath and say, okay, there's got to be a truth in the middle somewhere. There's got to be the...
Right. We need to bridge. We need to bridge it. We need to reconcile this difference. And how we do this is with the facts.
That's done by education.
We have proof.
We got to have proof, and we got to have education.
This is why they're trying to control desperately the all forms of alternative media that's working around their mainstream media. Is they got complete control of, but the alternative media, which the platform that you're on, they're desperately trying to control this so that people don't start putting it together, that they've been pitting us against each other, and they're kind of hoping on a big civil war, and then they come out and then that justifies martial law and all this stuff, and it goes crazy. And this is why those sealed indictments probably haven't been released yet, because they're trying to work with the psychological operations, I will know that when the Marines come in and take over CNN, then I know that we finally got through.
But I think people need a bigger education than that. I have this phrase I keep using: "Let the fools rage," but people need to be educated enough to say, "That's fools." I'm being polarized again. People need to be immunized against. They're already immunized against each other. They've got either their hard right or their hard left. Help me understand can we soften this a little bit here? Can you show me something in the middle here that I can't agree with? I think that's what people need to do. And by the example, the leadership that we have has been compromised by lobbyists. So we have the executive and the judiciary making laws when it should be the representatives that we don't really have. They're the ones that are supposed to be legislating. So we have an off-balance government. So I think we need representation back. And then the people need to kind of really get back into that game, to get our representation back.
I think also, Dan, that you brought out the word a little while ago. You said the word love. And that's the one that we need to concentrate on. Even Albert Einstein, about a year before his death, he said that my equations show that this whole universe is created from the vibration of love. And if we go back to that and say, it doesn't mean however we introduce that feeling in the body, that is not just a thought, that is an energy that spreads, and it spreads to the people around you and whoever is in your frequency of mind at the time. So when it comes to waking up people, I can see we call them the New Agers, we call them, flakes, and some people call them whatever. But they have, a lot of them, they have that vibration of love, and they bring it to the world, and it helps to raise the vibration of people so that they can actually start looking and thinking more rational, like Tom just talked about. We got to get to realize that, hey, we're being played as fools. We know they're fools, but no, I'm being played like a fool. And that just doesn't work. It will go in the ditch, and there are crocodiles in the ditch. You're in Florida, so you should know that.
We have plenty. Absolutely.
When we judge, we separate. when the message that we give to others has love in it, it's far more effective. And the thing is that what needs to come about, that is coming about, is that both sides, left and right and whatever,
Everything in the middle, right?
both sides, the conflicting side, need to understand that they're not each other's enemy. There is a third point that is manipulating behind the scenes, that is the common enemy of both, that is stopping us from having the world that, because everybody, I believe, wants to have, a world where there's happy, peaceful interaction between people, and that there's abundance